Welcome everyone. On behalf of the City of Santa Barbara, we want to welcome you to our first Lunch and Learn as part of Water Vision Month. We're glad you're here. We hope you join us again for the remaining sessions, and we're going to talk about previewing those a little bit later in this presentation. But for now, I know a lot of you have probably used Zoom meeting, but you may not have been part of a Zoom webinar, nor may have you been part of one that offers both English and Spanish at the same time. So I wanted to do just a quick orientation. In your Zoom panel, you're going to see two things. If you would like to join the Spanish channel, where you will have live interpretation from our interpreter, Carlos. On that bottom panel, you simply select interpretation or language, it may say on your end, and you select Spanish, and that will put you into the Spanish audio channel. You can go back and forth if you want, or just stay in that channel. Alternatively, if you would also like to submit a question during this session, Madeline is going to be presenting for about 20 or 30 minutes. You can add a question to the little box then that says Q&A at any time. Simply click on that. It's going to open a pop-up window for you, and you just type in your question and press return or enter on your computer or on your phone, and it'll send that question to us. We're going to hold those questions till the end. We have designated Q&A time, but go ahead and submit that at any time. You can also submit your question in Spanish, and Carlos will interpret that for us when the time comes. I think that's it for housekeeping. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Madeline and Joshua.
All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Joshua Hagmark. I'm the Water Resources Manager, and I'm just pleased that you've taken the time today to join us for this new way of connecting with our community. We will be making this recording available, at least the presentation. We will not be recording the Q&A session. But I want to kind of set the stage for what you're participating in. So this is the first event of Water Vision Month, and we'll be talking today about the Conservation Strategic Plan, but we've got a host of presentations for the rest of the week where we'll be diving into rates, water supply planning 101, what are other options for water, and then ending with on Friday with just a question and answers for anything we didn't cover. Just a little background, the Water Vision Month is part of a larger plan that we are doing to update the city's long-term water supply plan. This document that we are ultimately putting together looks out for the next 30 years of water needs for our community, and is there to ensure that we have adequate water to meet our needs, even in the face of climate change and significant droughts or water shortages. We do this type of planning effort approximately every 10 years. The last time we did this was in 2011. And so we've certainly had a lot that has happened over the last 10 years that we want to recognize in this new plan. And so with that, we're going to be going through this effort. We hope you will find the time to participate with us more. And one of the features that I hope you will take a look on our website, which is santabarbaraca.gov/watervision. You'll see on the site there's a way to participate in Water Vision Month, and we have a poster board that's up where you can post comments and questions about the water supply planning that the city is doing. You can see what others are commenting on and add to their strings of thought, and ultimately we will be taking all of that input and either directly answering those questions or making sure that our decision makers are aware of all those questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Madeline Wood, who's our Water Conservation Supervisor, who's going to walk you through our strategic plan, Water Conservation Strategic Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. My name is Madeline Wood. I'm the Water Conservation Supervisor, and today I'm pleased to be talking to you about our Water Conservation Strategic Plan. So just as an overview of our outline today for today's talk, we'll be talking about the city's water service, our Water Conservation Strategic Plan purpose, the historic and current water use, the methodology that was used for our plan, which is called the Decision Support System Model. We'll talk about demand forecasting, our selected suite of conservation measures. We'll talk about current conservation programs, and we'll finish with Q&A. As Joshua and Tiffany talked about, you can enter any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. So to start out, this is a map that depicts the city's water service area. So the dotted black line is the city limits, and the blue line is the city's water service area. And as you can see, it pretty closely matches the city limits, except for the Mission Canyon area, which is outside city limits, but is included in our water service area. So overall, we serve approximately 95,000 customers, a little bit over 20 square miles in area. We're bordered by other water providers surrounding the city. So to the west, we have La Cumbre Mutual Water Company that serves the Hope Ranch area, Goleta Water District, which serves the unincorporated and Goleta areas. And then to the east, we have the Montecito Water District. In terms of where our water comes from, the bulk of our water is through surface water supplies from the Santa Ynez River. And that river has 3 reservoirs on it. The one you are probably the most familiar with, which is the largest one, is Kochuma Reservoir. And Kochuma is also where our state water project is delivered. So this is imported water from Northern California, and it's brought to Lake Kochuma. And then upstream from Lake Kochuma, we have a smaller reservoir called Gibraltar Reservoir. That's owned and operated by the city. And water from both of these reservoirs is conveyed through the Santa Ynez Range here to the south coast. It's treated at the Cater Water Treatment Plant that's located in our foothills, and then distributed to our service area. We also have several groundwater wells in town, and the desalination plant, which currently provides about 1/3 of our water supplies, as well as the El Estero Water Resource Center that produces recycled water that's used for irrigation, dust control, toilet flushing in some areas, and other non-potable uses. So our conservation plan is a supporting document to the Enhanced Urban Water Management Plan, which is the plan that Joshua was just talking about. So the Water Vision Month that you are participating in is part of this Enhanced Urban Water Management Plan creation. And the conservation plan, which I'm speaking about today, is supporting that effort. So the conservation plan will enable the city to identify and prioritize conservation measures. And it's a result of a modeling exercise we did with our consultant, Medaus Water Management. This modeling exercise was first done in 2010 to support the long-term water supply plan. It was updated in 2014 at the beginning of the drought, and then also updated last year to support this conservation plan. Also, the objective is to meet future water efficiency targets that are currently being set by the state of California. So before we delve into demand projections, I want to briefly cover historical demands. Let's take a look at where we've been before we look at where we're going. So I'm going to walk you through a series of charts here. What you see at the bottom of the screen is rainfall, and this is rainfall measured in inches from 1897 to 2019, and this is measured in downtown Santa Barbara. So just a couple highlights. The highest rainfall that we have recorded was in 1997 of 47 inches. The lowest is 2006 of 6 inches, and the average is about 18 inches. And those yellow bars that you see are indications of drought periods. The next set of data that's brought in is the population in our service area. And this is from 1900 to 2019. So as you can see, there was a growth curve until about the 80s, where it started to plateau and have a slower rate of growth. And the last bit of data that's brought in is the green line, and that indicates water production. And this is in acre feet per year. That's a unit of volume we use for large volumes of water. So this is water production in acre feet per year from 1897 to 2019. And as you can see, it follows the trajectory of the population growth curve until about the 80s, where we had our severe drought from late 80s to early 90s, and you can see it dropped substantially. And then it also dropped in our current drought period that began in 2011. And what you can really see there is the delta between the population and the production, because you can see the community's commitment to conservation over the past 30 years. Currently, our community's water use is about the same level it was in the late 1950s, despite a population that has more than doubled since that time. So what that shows is we're getting more efficient, and our gallons per person per day are going down because this community has really embraced water efficiency as a way of life. In terms of potable water use by customer type, this pie chart depicts where our water is using based on customers. So as you can see, the bulk of the city's water use is residential. Single family accounts and multifamily accounts add up to about 72% of the water use. Commercial and industrial is about 22%, and dedicated irrigation meters. So these are meters that are not serving any indoor purpose. They're often larger irrigated areas, such as parks or schools that aren't on recycled water. That is about 6%. So we used for our conservation plan what's called the Decision Support System model. And the technical analysis that we started last year had 4 main goals: to project the future water demand, to evaluate our current conservation program and identify new conservation measures, to quantify the costs and savings of these measures, and then combine the measures into more aggressive programs and evaluate the costs and water savings. So when we evaluate our measures, we're evaluating them based on what's called the avoided cost of additional water supplies. So is it more cost effective for us to develop a conservation measure to reduce water use, or is it more cost effective for us to develop an additional supply to meet that water demand? So out of 100 potential measures, we screened it down to 21 measures that we evaluated through our DSS model analysis. These measures were screened with several different criteria, such as water use characteristics, the economies of scale, and the demographics. And I'll just touch on a couple of these here that you see on your screen. Technology maturity refers to if it's available on the market for our customer base and for our area. We've seen a lot of great advances in technology over the past several years, in irrigation efficiency, in smart home connected devices, but we want to make sure that that's readily available and commercially available for our customers to purchase. Another one to touch on is account saturation. This refers to the extent to which customers would be willing to implement a measure based on how much they've already conserved. So have they reached their limit in their ability to conserve more water with a particular measure? One example of this would be low flow toilets. We have over 80% of our service area has low flow toilets, so the ability to conserve that additional 20% is harder to establish. And this graphic depicts all the various elements that are brought into the decision support system model. We have our customer categories on the left. We feed in the demand and water use over the past 10 years. We also add in the growth projections for the planning horizon, which in our case is through 2050. So what are we anticipating for population growth, employment growth, and then our short-term drought recovery. We're not entirely sure at what point we will be feeling like we've recovered from this current drought, where the demand will end up. So we anticipated that would be about 2019 to 2025. And then that leads to our projected demands over the next 30 years. And then we add in our passive conservation measures. So everything we've already implemented in the past that continues into the future because water savings are cumulative. And we add in the plumbing code, and we add in our new planned conservation measures. And that gives us our demand forecast.
Madeline, can you slow down just a little bit?
Sure.
Carlos is trying to keep up, especially when you're talking through some of the descriptions.
The technical details.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. We're almost done with all the charts too. So this figure presents historical and projected water demand, and it's in acre feet per year, and it's in different scenarios. So the dark blue is the historical demand from the past 20 years. The orange is the demand without the plumbing code. And the plumbing code plays a significant role, as you can see. And this includes current local, state, and federal plumbing code standards for retrofits such as toilets, urinals, shower heads, faucets, clothes washers. And generally what we see in terms of these impacts are any development opportunities, so anything new that's put in, but anything that is being retrofitted. For example, at this point, if you go to Home Depot or go to a local plumbing store, you won't be able to buy anything that's over a gallon and a quarter per flush per toilet. So it's market saturation and also what's available to customers as they retrofit their plumbing. So that is the orange line, is if there wasn't plumbing code. The blue line shows the impacts of the plumbing code. So that's our demands modeled with the plumbing code added. And then the lower green line is our demands with the plumbing code and the conservation measures that we recommend moving forward with. And what we see here is the cost of savings per unit volume for the conservation measures that we modeled. So the most effective measures are up at the top, where you'll see the cost for savings of unit volume is the smallest, and the least cost effective are at the bottom. So each measure was analyzed independently, but it's important to note that very few of these measures operate independently. So what commonly happens is a customer will have something like a water checkup, one of our programs, and that may lead to an irrigation rebate. So they are interrelated, but they are independently analyzed, so we are not double counting savings. So I'll just highlight a few of these since there's a lot on the screen right now. I mentioned the water checkup program. That's a really popular program of ours where we have city staff that will come to your home or your business. They'll talk to you about our programs. They'll show you how to read your meter, help you identify potential leaks that you may have, run through your irrigation timer. Those irrigation timers can often lead to very high water bills if they're not monitored and set properly, and show you how to evaluate your water use. This is a really helpful program, and we are still doing it virtually with COVID precautions. So we help folks over the phone, or we're happy to do some sort of video app like FaceTime, and it's a great program, and we're happy to continue it even if we can't physically come to your property at this point. Another one I wanted to highlight is school education. You see there up at the top. We have a lot of great school education programs. We have in-class presentations, which are now on Zoom. We have musical assemblies, which are also on Zoom. And we have field trips and take-home kits where the students can work with their parents to install new aerators and check their toilets for leaks. So we're happy to see that that is a cost-effective program. And then down towards the bottom, you'll see rain barrel rebate or large rainwater catchment system rebate. We really encourage folks to store rainwater where it counts, which would be in the soil, like redirecting downspouts and gutters into the soil, rather than something physical like a rain barrel. Because when we get our rain, we generally get it all in the winter, and then the plants really need that water in the summer. So rain barrels are typically about 50 gallons that they hold, I love rain barrels. It's just, as you can see, not a very cost-effective program for the city to, for example, issue rebates on rain barrels. That 50 gallons, you would have to hold on to it for a long time to then apply it several months later to make an impact to your landscaping. So the city has elected to implement what we've called Program B, which is 17 of the measures that were modeled in the planning effort, and that is what's in orange here on the screen. And it also includes our current conservation programs, which are the light blue above. The Program B is a robust program. It has the highest benefit cost ratio that we modeled, and it provides a full range of measures and benefits for all of our customer categories. However, water use is dynamic. It responds to changes in population, in the economy, in the weather, in the rainfall, and also as technology changes. So this planning effort resulted in what we're calling a suite of conservation measures that the city can implement as needed and as budget and timeline permits, but they won't all be available at once. So in the future, as the community evolves and the water use patterns and demands change, this is when the city will evaluate how to roll them out. All right, and this table is showing the potable water demands and the savings in our planning horizon, so 2020 to 2050, and it's in acre feet per year. What you'll see in the top line, the top row, is our baseline potable water demands if there was no plumbing code and there was no conservation program. The middle row are the demands with the plumbing code and our conservation measures. And then the lower row is the savings. So you can see it's just a subtraction down each column. And what you'll see here is that the savings are cumulative over the 30-year planning horizon. The measures that we have included generally have a long fixture life. For example, new landscaping or landscape retrofit, we estimate about 12 years. And then also the effects of the plumbing code are cumulative as older fixtures get replaced with more efficient models and the technology improves over time. So we currently operate a robust water conservation program that targets our customer classes. And some of the key measures in our program include water waste prevention through our municipal code and enforcement, landscape design standards for development projects, our website, which has great how-to videos, and our conservation mainline. The water checkup appointments that I mentioned, which are still ongoing, they are just virtual at this point. We've got rebates on mulch and high efficiency clothes washers. We have a great gardening certification program. It's called the Green Gardener Program. It's taught in English and Spanish through City College Adult Education. We've got some Garden 101 classes, which I'll mention in a couple slides. And we have irrigation budgets for our dedicated irrigation account. So this graphic is just a summary of our conservation participation over the past 5 years in terms of the number of water checkups that we've provided, the irrigation evaluations. These are a subset of water checkups where our city staff has helped someone, or either the homeowner or property manager or gardener, go through the irrigation controller and configure the settings. We've also issued over 1,200 landscape rebates, 1,800 free mulch deliveries. We've got a really comprehensive YouTube channel with a lot of DIY, do-it-yourself education videos for both indoor and outdoor conservation. Our youth education program has reached over 13,000 youth. And then down at the bottom, these are our class attendees for our landscape and 101 classes and our hands-on workshops. And if you're ready for more Lunch and Learns, I just wanted to plug a couple of our Landscape 101 classes that are coming up. On Tuesday, October 13th from 12 to 1 is Gray Water 101. So that'll be an overview of the concepts and best practices for the two simple systems that can be installed called Laundry to Landscape and Shower to Flower. And then the Landscape Maintenance 101 class is on Monday, October 19th, also from 12 to 1. And this will cover plant establishment, irrigation, pruning, mulching, fertilizing, and more. Those are both going to be via Zoom, and you can register at the URL down below, or if you just go to the city's website and search garden classes. And I'll turn it over to Dakota Corey.
Thank you, Madeline. That was a super informative presentation. I just wanted to sort of close up this presentation by encouraging all of our participants to participate further in Water Vision Month. We're encouraging people to learn, engage, and interact. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the direct link to our Water Vision Month activities. It's santabarbaraca.gov/watervisionmonth. Next slide, please. So for that learn piece, we have many online videos on our Water Vision Month website with various topics, including descriptions of some of our water supply sources like Kochuma Reservoir and the Gibraltar Reservoir. We also have some videos on this planning effort that we're undertaking to redo our long-term water supply plan. So why our city needs a water vision, how our stakeholders have been informing that water vision, risks and uncertainties around our water supply, and then what goes into creating a future water supply plan. So those videos are available for you to watch at any time. They'll be available in Spanish soon. And if we go to the next slide, please. For the engage piece, Joshua spoke about this a little bit earlier, and this gives you a screenshot to kind of understand what we're talking about. We have this social pinpoint board, which allows people to comment on various topics, and then just like a social media post, you can reply to people's comments and kind of start a conversation thread or add your own. And we're really trying to have this water supply planning process be a transparent and customer engaged process. And so we really encourage anyone and everyone to hop on this board and let the city know what your values are around water supply, what your thoughts and concerns are around supply planning. It's really going to help us inform our plan moving forward so that we can come up with a plan that really meets our city's needs as best as possible. And next slide, please. And finally, we encourage you to interact like we are here today. Soon we're going to have a Q&A session. And so we have 4 more lunch and learns this week. On Tuesday, October 6th, we'll be talking about where our water comes from. On Wednesday, October 7th, we have the basics of water rates. And I'll tell you, water rates aren't very basic. It's a complex topic, but we always get lots of questions. And I think that's going to be really informative. On Thursday, October 8th, we're going to talk about methods to optimize water resilience and reliability. So what is the city doing to make sure that we have a reliable and resilient water supply in the future? And then finally, on October 9th, we encourage you to bring any and all of your questions to our open house panel Q&A, where city staff will be on hand to answer any questions that you have about water, water supply planning, etc. So I encourage you to continue to participate in Water Vision Month. And again, the link is at the bottom of our slides. Thank you. And I think that starts us off with our Q&A.
We have 2 questions that have been submitted through the Q&A panel so far. So let's start there. The first one is from Courtney. As many of us have adopted more home gardening and growing food in our own yards in this pandemic, have you built this into your water demand projections? And are you considering giving credits to families for, quote, farming at home?
I can go ahead and take this question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dakota.
Okay, so it is a very good question. The way that water demand planning works is we look at water use at the parcel level. So I'm assuming a home that's doing more gardening probably is a single family residential home. And so we look at all of our single family residential lots and we say, what's the potential for water use on that lot? And then we add that all up, and we add that up with our different water use types like commercial, multifamily, residential, et cetera. And then that's how we predict out what we think water use is going to look like in the future. And it also includes things like economic growth, population growth, like are we going to get more dense in the city? And that's how we describe our demands. And so there's definitely accounting for home gardening. And one thing that the water demands don't do is they don't apply like a budget for a particular customer. So we're not going to come and say, you know, at this specific household, you can use only this amount of water. We're really looking at our overall picture and making sure that we have enough water to meet future demands for all of our customers as a whole.
And just another reminder as we're letting Carlos translate, we want to try to slow down just a hair. The second question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Carlos to see if we have any questions in Spanish, is from Barbara. What does large-scale rainwater catchment consist of to you, to the city? And I think that refers to one of your earlier slides, Madeline.
Yeah, so this is what's often called a cistern. So it's a larger than a rain barrel. It's usually about 250 gallons. So we modeled the average rain barrel, which is about 50 gallons that it can hold in capacity, and then we modeled the larger cistern. So what we've done instead is we have a lot of resources in terms of how to install them, how to use them. We've done great hands-on workshops with Sweetwater Collaborative, one of the nonprofits here in town. But the actual rebate of the device is something that isn't cost effective at this point. So we really rely on the education side and encouraging people to learn if it's going to be useful to their site, whether that's a smaller rain barrel or a larger cistern. They're great in terms of offsetting your potable water demands for irrigating your landscape, but in terms of the city rebate, it's still not panning out to be cost effective for the city to pay for those.
Great. So just checking for those two folks, Courtney and Barbara, if you have deeper questions, if we didn't answer your question thoroughly, please let us know. Carlos, I'd like to hand it over to you. Do we have any questions on the Spanish channel? Doesn't look like we do. All right. So another question that I know the city gets pretty often, are the impacts of water rates included in the model and demand forecast?
So what we have modeled is basically that the rates will be increasing along with inflation. And that is something that we can model. There's just a lot of unknowns with water rates. So we can always add that as a measure. We would need to anticipate how high the rate increases are going to be and how that's going to affect certain customer behavior. So that's something that we can always model in the future. But for our current conservation demand model, it's just the inflation rates. So dependent on the increase in the rates, some customer categories will react in different ways in terms of their water usage. But the rate increases can be a driver to our conservation program measures. So that's something that we can fine tune and model as needed. And at this point, it's just the inflation rate.
Great. And we do have a follow-up to Courtney's earlier question. Based on my understanding of farming practices, home gardening is far more water efficient than commercial farming. Would you consider applying lower water rates to those of us farming from home?
I can go ahead and give that one a shot as well.
Thank you.
It's another good question. And I do agree with you, Courtney, that typically when somebody is watering their own garden by hand, especially, it can be quite efficient because you're really kind of in touch with what's going on in your specific landscape and microclimate. And so you're applying just the water that you need to grow your food, and you have a really close eye on that. In terms of water rates, I encourage you to come to our water rate planning lunch and learn, because it's going to dive into this question a little bit further. But what we're kind of getting at with that question is individual landscape budgets for individual properties, which is another way that water rates can be constructed. And so typically those budgets account for things like the number of people living on the property, how large the landscape is. And the city has explored building our rates around a water budget approach versus our tiered conservation rate that we have now. And we actually found that it would most likely be more expensive for our customers if we had those individual water-based budgets, because currently our lowest cost water, which is our tier 1 water, is allocated our least expensive supplies, and that allows our customers who use the least amount of water to pay the least on their water bill. And if we were to go to budget-based rates, there's more water that falls into that lower category, so we have to add in more expensive supplies, and then the rates go up a little bit for everybody. So that's, again, water rate planning is really complex, and I hope that answered the question. If not, I definitely encourage you to participate in our water rate discussion in a few days, because we'll dive deeper into that. Or if you have a further question, I can try to give it another shot.
Thanks, Dakota. Another question we have, are people using more water this year, or are they still conserving due to drought?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been monitoring the water use compared to what we're calling our pre-drought level, which would be 2013. This is something that we also report to the state. So what we saw throughout most of the drought was about a 30% reduction. There were times where it was much higher than that. But in general, throughout that drought period, it was about 30%. And what we've been seeing recently is a 28% reduction. So the water supply conditions have improved. We're still recovering from drought, but in terms of water use, we are still seeing a lot of community conservation. And I think that's because a lot of people took long-term changes in terms of replacing high water use landscaping or irrigation systems with something that is more efficient. There's been some behavior changes. So although we're seeing a start to the drought recovery, we are still seeing a lot of really impressive conservation savings from our community. And it's yet to be determined what the impacts of COVID-19 are going to be on water usage. We've seen residential go up a little bit and commercial go down a little bit, but it's hard to determine how the next year or so is going to look, or how 2020 overall is going to look.
Thank you. Okay, so one of our attendees mentioned, thank you for this information. And will demand forecasting consider scenarios that include a need for more water for cooling or air conditioning, given climate change, and or advances in technology such as ultra low flow toilets, irrigation controller, remote turnoffs, etc.?
Yeah, so what we have modeled is what we project, but of course there's always new technology. So what we're anticipating is about every 5 to 10 years we will reevaluate. We've already looked at new measures that did not exist in 2014 because technology has really come a long way in terms of water efficient products. So in terms of the like remote shutoff or irrigation technology, I think as that continues to advance and become more available on the market, we'll see the impacts of that, and that will drive down demand, and that will help us model in the future. And then in terms of air conditioning, we don't have a lot of cooling towers here in the city. That can be a very high water use appliance, but most new air conditioning systems that go in are not, they're air cooled, they're not using water. So it would only be a big impact if there's additional cooling towers that are installed. But the cooling tower technology has also advanced. So what we're looking at that comes out on the market is more efficient, and we do have the plumbing code to thank for that, as well as the manufacturers. So there's always going to be new exciting technology out there. We're really excited about it. We've piloted a few things, And again, this will be reevaluated as new measures come out so we can see how those might impact our demands.
Great. Any other questions from the Spanish channel, Carlos? Maybe shake your head no if we don't have any. All right, I think that's it for the questions that are coming in for participants. Dakota and Madeline and Joshua, do you want to kind of close us out?
Sure. Sorry for the pause.
Everybody's waiting for the other person.
Yeah. Again, I just want to thank our participants today. We're really excited about this opportunity to interact with our customers, and we hope that we see you again at future events, and definitely encourage you to jump back onto the Water Vision webpage and check out the pinpoint board and some of the videos, and we will see you in the future.
And for any other questions, my contact information is at the bottom, so please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you all for joining us. And along with the rest of the Water Vision Month, I do want to remind you about our upcoming 101 classes. So Gray Water 101 and Landscape Maintenance 101, and we hope to see you there. Joshua, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just again, thank you everyone for participating today. I don't know what's wrong with my camera, but it won't come back on. So, but anyway, thank you all for participating today, and look forward to seeing you this week and your comments this month as you can chime in on where we should be going with our water supply planning. Thank you.
Great, thank you everyone.